As an artist, there's a certain and significant periods of time, when one goes inside, when one is reflective, when one profits and works on not a loneliness, but an aloneness. Be it in the studio alone, or more for me, just walking or traveling alone. Having other humans at a certain distance, in order to listen ever more subtly to the inner life. Not only listen to it and be able to consider things about it rationally, but just to be in that ocean of sounds, impulses, thoughts, and even pre-thoughts. And of course, I live off this, and I love to do this. And this is not only necessary, but it energizes me. Beside this, one of the things I love about dancing and performing and teaching is the other people. And not only the face-to-face interaction with them, performer to audience, teacher to participant, but the collaborative element where the roles are not always in the same hierarchy or delineation. So I love to work collaboratively with people of other art forms, and the interaction with all of these people, the audience, the students, the other co-workers, I think is one of the reasons that I dance. And I remember the first time I went into a dance company, the first rehearsal, there was an array of people who also came from an array of different countries. And I thought I was in heaven. I thought this is where I want to be. They're different. They have significant differences and radical differences, and yet there was this central thing that we all somehow were dedicated or interested or focusing on, which was making and then performing. A very wise teacher said to me a number of years ago, when I was nervous before a class, don't worry, they're not there for you and you are not there for them. They and you are both there for the work, and that's where you meet. And then, if that's clear, then of course you can be there for each other. And this human penetration of thoughts, ideas, feelings can really flow because of this third element, you could call it, this third clarity. No, we're all interested, fascinated, obsessed by something, in my case, of the body, what the body makes in terms of dance and voice, text, imagination, story, emotion, and that lives in the living arena of other living people, the public. It's deeply communal, although the roles can be very distinct. When you're performing, it's very clear you are the performer and you take certain responsibilities. And the audience also takes certain responsibilities. And yet what's made is an amalgam of all of those energies, guided in different ways by people of different parts in the deal. And you can rehearse a piece, for instance, a lot. And you can get it to a certain level. But the moment you're in performance, there really is a whole step, like a sea change. There's a complete shift because it's being received. Regardless of whether it's being liked or not, it's being received. And that takes the material out like and then casts back in something that is more mature, more tonified than simply the giving out of the material, bland. And that's collaborative. Is how can you, either as a performer or a teacher, how can you convey certain philosophies, certain feelings without proselytizing, without wrapping them up in a form or a dogma? How can they just emanate from you, which is not you? Which is not about your discovery or your personal aesthetics. How can they just come through somehow? And of course, I love the text. I love to work the text, but I'm very careful what forms of text are being used to say what gets said. That's very, very delicate, what you say on stage, because it is empowered, it's an empowered place, but also it comes with a live body. And live text with the live body is a huge power. Back in the old city, back in the rambling streets of ruins, back in the greys and blacks and sometimes sepias of the old city, back in the warm womb of history, I glide and take you gliding beside me as we walk through the old city, its makings and unmakings, its ruins so sweet, forgetting those in the rubble. You have a problem with this? A variety of concepts and imaginations that put forward to us the possibility, probability, actuality of other worlds, of other lives, which might be true or not. Will one find out? When will one remember before one's born? Very interesting. And also very celebrated in nearly every single civilization. But what is clear is that in this life, illusion or not, even if it's an illusion, the illusion is that things can change. It seems to be a place where change is possible, where we are allowed to change and to be in the state of change. Now, whether that change happens to us or whether we are the instruments of that change, we can talk and maybe waste a lot of time considering which it is. But what is obvious is that we are in a tangible world of change. And alongside that, it has been proposed that those spirits in other worlds might be faced with a situation where change is not so possible. one could relegate all of this to stories. But it's interesting that these sorts of stories have come up in many different civilizations. The point being, to me, that it seems like, very actively, we are in a privileged situation where we can change things, or where things are in change inside us and around us, and we participate in that. One of the great things that I've noticed in everyone is their wanting to participate. Maybe this is the big cri de coeur of everyone on earth. I just want to participate. I want to be a part of this thing. I just want to participate. And if that means I'm a bank robber or whatever, I want to participate. I want to be in the seasons changing. I want to be in the years changing. I want to be in the moving of mountains. I want to be in the making of coffee and not making coffee. I want to participate. And in a world which is completely and evidently where change can manifest, that means that you want to participate in change in some way. Whether it's destruction or construction. There's a wonderful joke somehow labeled at the Irish. I'm sure it's labeled at different groups of people by other groups of people. And the joke is an Irishman comes up to two people having a fight and says, is this a private fight or can anyone join in? And I love this joke because it talks about even in a destructive situation, the human wants to participate. Given all of that, there suddenly becomes like a little compass that goes, wow, could I participate in this constructive side? Could I find out about this destructive side? Could I, etc., etc.? Where do I angle my agent for change? Because I'm in change, and anything I do relates to change and influences change. And where it comes to the art and certain other forms of activity, there's this possibility that one cannot just attempt to change the world outside the human skin, but also the being inside the human skin. And that's what a possibility. And I think every artist feels that change is something that they're allowed to participate in inside themselves. And often it takes a form which wouldn't be called change. For instance, just refining your perceptions is change. Listening is change. Perception is movement. Perception is change. So daring or taking the privilege to entrain or to focus on or to spend minutes or hours simply in the act of listening, you are participating in change. Alley. Smaller alley. Hidden. The nose away. An ancient plague. Take the nose. She has known. She will be seen in the dark. Ali? Ali? I'd jump in at the deep end. Phrasing is very important to me. What is a phrase? What is a phrase in speech? A phrase, a sentence, a paragraph, a chapter. What is a sequence that has its acceptance of its beginning and its end? And how a clarity of its beginning and its end allows the contents to relaxedly interact. For when a section of information, speech or dancing, seems not to accept, let's say, just its end, all the contents are left wondering how they might relate, and whether they relate just to each other or something further which will arrive into the phrase, and they tend to become information rather than communication. Before you start talking about the communication between person A and person B, a phrase in words communicates in itself. The words in a sentence that is finished communicate amongst themselves, the subject and the predicate, the adjectives, the adjectives with the noun, the adverbs with the verbs. They actually sit in a body of time or space if they're on the written page. And while they might be read or spoken in linear sequence, what's going on in their mind and in the mind of anybody who's participating in that is that the mind is jumping from bits to another and back, going forwards, imagining there, then getting there and referring back to there, even within a normal, ordinary, quotidian, daily phrase of speech. Our reception of it is not linear. And when there is therefore a clear sense of phrasing, which is both the beginning and the end, and the passage between, then further whole layers of meaning come from that phrase, which is not only the meaning of one word and one word in relationship to another, which can be quite codified and transcribed into individual meaning, but it's also something on another level, which is sensations of meaning, which is not a vagueness of meaning, it's another level on which meaning vibrates in us. But it needs the very building blocks to be clear, in my opinion, in my experience. So, not only in text work, where it's maybe more obvious because of our daily use of text, but also in the dancing body, maybe especially in the dancing body, because after you're born, basically you keep moving until the moment you die. So, unlike speaking, where you actually stop speaking for parts of your life, we don't stop living or moving. Even in the most profound, meditative, quiet state of body, the body is moving. So a phrase that's based on not moving, moving and then not moving is deeply not realistic. It's often, and I notice this in teaching, a difficulty to end a phrase is because you are in some micro sense dealing with death. Not to over dramatize it, but you are. it is complicated in the human body because you cannot suddenly put the instrument down. You are still in the instrument. So it needs a deep physiological a participation and agreement in the body, not just to stop the movement, but somehow to share. Yeah, that's the end of that phrase. In my 20s, when I was in certain companies that were very, very demanding, and I felt I didn't want to push my body to answer those demands. Accompanied with that, because of coming, and this is more coming from the theatre world, the artistic life of somebody in theatre is projected to go on and until you drop. There are roles, celebrated roles, for people in every decade, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. And when I got to dance, the projected roles for a dancer ended at about 35 and were then a little bit patronizingly accepting when in your 40s, but possibly not. They were moving roles, not dancing roles. And I just thought this cut the career imagination in half in terms of time. And I saw older people, and I've always been very drawn to them, physically as well. Their skin, the way their bones move, the relationship between the bones and the skin, and being beside them or present with them. And I wanted to have bodies like that, able for a long career. And I started actively considering that, yes, in my 20s. And part of that was not feeling that I wanted to be involved in a certain kind of pushing and strained excess in the dancing work. And this is why still now I'm at ease in my body. Of course, partly might be genetics, of course, but part of it is not just as I was growing older, but right in my 20s, I felt, no, I want longer time. This was linked to a fact that while I'm quick-minded, I'm slow in developing. And I just thought, in 3 decades or 2 decades, I'm not going to get that far. I'm going to need 3 or 4 or 5 decades to get to where I want to be.